Welcome everyone. We are waiting 2 more minutes for everyone to join. Thank you for your patience. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Lucic, Head of Business Development at BiOceanOr. We are very happy to welcome you at our first webinar. Today, we will talk about digitalization in aquaculture and how new technology as IoT and intelligence artificial can help aquaculture to be more innovative and sustainable. To present this session, Charlotte Dupont, our COO at BiOceanOr, will share her expertise on the subject. She has a PhD in systems biology and more than 5 years of experience in data science and IoT. She is currently coordinating all the IoT platform and artificial intelligence features development at BiOceanOr. For my part, I will moderate the session. The session will be organized with a 30-minute presentation and a 10-minute question and answer sessions. Along the presentation, feel free to write questions you may have on the chat dedicated on the right side of your screen. Some of the moderators will answer it during the presentation, and for the rest, we will answer it at the end of it. Thank you again for your interest on this subject, and I pass it over to Charlotte Dupont. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilou, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I am glad to be the presenter of today's session about 2020, the era of digitalized aquaculture. So what we're going to talk about today. First, I will give you some aquaculture trends figures because of the very interesting SOFIA 2020 report from the FAO that just came out last week. Then we will talk about what is aquaculture monitoring in the past and present and have a glimpse of aquaculture monitoring in the future. Then, because we are talking about digitalization, I will explain what is IoT and AI and how it can help aquaculture. After that, I will present some specific use case in 3 categories. The first series of use case will be about high-value continuous information with different water quality parameters. The second series of use case will present the importance of safe and reliable data. The third series will talk about sustainability. To end this webinar, I will present briefly BiOceanOr products, how we are part of digitalization revolution in aquaculture, and how we can help aquaculturists to take that turn. So let's start with some of aquaculture trends. Last week, the FAO released their biannual report on the state of world fisheries and aquaculture, that we call also SOFIA. I wanted to take some time to talk about the information that emerged from this report. First of all, seafood consumption has reached 20.5 kilograms per person per year in 2018. It has grown of 3% per year since the 60s. And because of that, seafood is still the first source of protein for humans worldwide. And this seafood protein source comes mostly from aquaculture now, with a figure of 52%. It has never stopped progressing, and it is estimated that it will reach 59% in 10 years. It can be explained by the volume of the production by aquaculture that has grown of 25% in the last decades as compared to the fisheries that has only grown of 7%. All this information confirms year after year that aquaculture is an exponentially growing sector. That's why digitalization must happen at some point to have the best practices and the lowest environmental impact possible. So as we mentioned environmental impact, the keyword and title of this report is Sustainability in Action. Fisheries sustainability must be achieved at highest level, but also aquaculture sustainability, which is an important sustainability. These preoccupations are part of the UN Sustainable Development Goal and especially Goal 14. And yes, increasing sustainability is possible, but it will be achieved only with a good water quality monitoring and a precise farm management. So now let's talk about how aquaculture monitoring is done. And first, what do we see today in aquaculture? Too often, we observe analog aquaculture management. Data is gathered by hand, sometimes only once a day, and data can be lost or untraceable and lost its value. This kind of aquaculture management is imprecise, doesn't have any real-time capabilities, and the traceability is low. We also observe imprecise feeding. Farmers that give manually scoops of feed into tanks or ponds is a reality. That leads to environmental pollution because of all of the feed that gets lost outside of the cages. And also a large amount of food is wasted and a lot of money is lost because of this uneaten and non-reusable food. With this imprecise feeding, fish growth is not well controlled because feeding time and quantity is not adapted to the reality of the animal appetites. A phenomenon that we observe more and more frequently is the microalgae blooms. This event occurs when all the environmental conditions are met for the optimum of growth of the microalgae. Therefore, they grow exponentially and bloom in few hours. The microalgae needs oxygen to survive, and such a big concentration of microalgae reduces the oxygen level in the water drastically. And also some species can be highly toxic for animals. The frequency of the bloom appearance can also deplete the ecosystems durably. So if it is true that we see more microalgae blooms over the year, and research shows that climate change is to blame for that, we also see too many farmers helpless in the face of these blooms. So now, what do we want to see tomorrow in aquaculture? We want to see a digital aquaculture management with real-time and precise monitoring. We want to see all the information that we can gather precisely and immediately. We want to be sure that data is accurate, not depending on employee knowledge or know-how. We want to be certain that data is never lost and always reusable. But most importantly, we want to be able to use this data efficiently to provide added value, to provide advice, to anticipate issues, to improve and learn from the past. Digital aquaculture management gives powerful tools to a better production. We also want to see smart feeding. We want to see feeding practices that impact less the environment. With a smart, accurate, ultra-specific feeding plan, money can be saved and production can be optimized. Also, growth can be precisely predicted. Regarding the microalgae bloom, we don't want any farmer to face it when it's too late, when the production is lost. We want farmers to be notified when and where a bloom can occur, or when a bloom has already occurred a few miles away from the farm and it is coming closer. With this anticipation, farmers can take actions. They can harvest sooner if it is possible to avoid losing it all. For filtering animals like oyster, farmers can put their production in decontamination very soon to protect it. And all of this is possible with the digitalization of the practices. So now I would like to take some time to explain what is IoT and what is AI. So IoT stands for Internet of Things. So why do we call it Internet of Things? Because they are objects that connect themselves to the Internet. They gather and they send their data with no human interaction. In fact, every one of you knows this object. Everyone has at least one of these objects. A watch that calculates your daily footstep is an IoT device. A camera that protects your home and sends alerts to the police is an IoT device. Smartphone, television, humidity sensors, even a car now can be an IoT device. In 2019, there were 26 billion of IoT devices that were connected to Internet. 127 new devices are today connected every second worldwide. So this world of connectivity is part of our world today. But now it is time that we use the IoT technology for aquaculture. So I let you imagine a fish farm where sensors are deployed everywhere. In the fish cages, on the fish cages, outside the fish cages, on the boats, and on the management house. Imagine what does it mean. It means that fish farmers can get remotely, instantly, and continuously information about fish production status, cage status, water quality inside and outside the cages, feeding status, both capacities and maintenance status. This is a new world of efficiency that opens. And the IoT technology does not only provide connected sensors. Because it is designed this way, it provides security and long-term storage capabilities. Data will not be lost or stolen. Now, you've probably heard of big data. But what big data really means? To truly understand this new and quite trendy term, you need to realize that every 2 days we create in the world as much data as we did from the beginning of humanity until 2003. Every 2 days. For example, 300 of hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every minute. 1 trillion of photos are taken and shared every year. And also we have 40,000 search queries that are performed on Google every second. So, in fact, big data only means that we are in the era of information. And with all these connected devices and high-speed internet capacities, we produce massive amounts of information. And that is also true for aquaculture. Let's go back to a fish farm where sensors are deployed everywhere. We can get from it a lot of data. Time series data, graphs, alerts, status, comparison data, forecasts, images, videos, and we are very happy to gather all this data. But what do we do with it? Is it too much? And do we need to throw all this data because we are overwhelmed with it? Because we don't know how to analyze it and to extract the potential of it? So hopefully no. Even if it is true that today, less than 0.5% of all data is ever analyzed and used, with big data and new technologies also appeared artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, so AI, is the ability of a computer program or a machine to think and learn. Computer systems with AI are able to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and translation between languages. So for aquaculture, artificial intelligence will be a big help. A connected fish farm with all its sensors will truly unleash its potential. It will be possible to have analysis that is always adapting and learning, to have multi-parameters comparison in seconds, to have also parameters forecast for better anticipation. It is also possible to add outside data, like weather forecast and satellite imaging. All of this combined will give ultra-specific advice because there are no two identical farms. Each farm is unique with its unique environmental condition, management practices, and production yields. This is why digitalized aquaculture must happen and is in fact happening now. So I hope that you have at this point a good idea of what is IoT and AI and how it can help aquaculture. If you have any question, please type them in the chat and I will be glad to answer at the end of the presentation. Now, let me give you some concrete example and use case of IoT and AI for aquaculture. These use cases fall into three categories. High-value continuous information with temperature, oxygen, turbidity, and pH monitoring. Safe and reliable data with data traceability and decalibration detection. And sustainability with certification optimization. So let's start with high-value continuous information use case. The first parameter I wanted to show is the oxygen. Of course, oxygen is one of the most important parameters that every farmer has to monitor. Here is an example of a daily oxygen monitoring, and with this data, we see that oxygen is always good and quite stable. In fact, no issue is detected and no action is taken. But let's see now what happens with continuous data monitoring. With continuous monitoring, you can see the reality is not the same. Oxygen is varying a lot and even gets very low in the night. This is a normal biological process. Photosynthetic microorganisms in the water, they are producing oxygen during the day. So this is the rising phase of the curve. And they are consuming oxygen during the night. This is the descending phase of the curve. So these ups and downs, actually, they are not an issue. However, we need to control the amplitude of these ups and downs and to be sure that the oxygen is not getting too low. Because too low oxygen, even for a short period of time, is stressful for aquatic organisms. And of course, too low oxygen for a longer period of time can cause death. So one of the advice that BiOceanOr gives to its customer in that case is to give the best time to activate the aerator in order to reduce the stress and mortality. Also, the feeding can be adapted to the oxygen levels. Indeed, giving feed in low oxygen condition can lead to fish death because they will consume all the oxygen left during the feeding process. So as you can see on this graph, red zones are detected for a no feeding alert, and the advice for the fish farmer will be to feed at the best time and to avoid these red zones. Feeding at the best time is also important because of all the money that can be saved. If feeding is done at the right time, it will be eaten by the fish properly and it will contribute to the fish growth directly. Moreover, with AI, we are even able to predict the evolution of the oxygen in the next hours. It is very important to be able to anticipate the oxygen depletion. Here you can see an oxygen forecast curve in blue as compared to the real values black curve. And as you can imagine, this is a powerful alert that we give to our farmers. They will be able to take decisions and actions before the problem even occurs. And in this particular context with social distanciation issues, it is even a more powerful tool because it allows farm managers to adapt efficiently the team planning to the reality of the cage and the tank's situation. Temperature now. Temperature seems to be a very simple parameter to follow. However, it is also a high-value information when it is continuously monitored. For example, some microorganisms that can only grow at some optimum temperature. So then an alert can be raised for the oyster farms when the risk of bacterial proliferation is high. Also, the growth of fish and shrimp can be optimized with precise temperature, especially in controlled environment like RAS system. Another example is the optimal temperature range for Atlantic salmon that is from 8 to 14 degrees, but they can also develop well up to 18 degrees. Therefore, in Chile, there is a natural competitive advantage with average temperature of 12 degrees, and the production is few months shorter than any other salmon production region because they have lower average temperature. So now let's talk about turbidity. The turbidity is, in fact, the water transparency. A variation of turbidity in the water can directly influence the biological processes like behavior or feed intake and other parameters such as microbes. Turbidity can also influence the quality of bivalve animal filter, like oysters. It increases the quantity of sludge in the shell and in an oyster. Before the sale, an oyster must be cleaned and in a clear water tank, and it takes a lot of time. So it is better to choose the best harvest time to optimize the duration in the depuration tanks. Also, turbidity is often linked to the nutriment quantity in the water, developing bacteria or microalgae, potentially harmful to the fish or shell. So the advice for oyster farmer is to adapt the best harvest strategy with the turbidity monitoring. And for fish and shrimp farmers, we advise to adapt the best bacterial care. pH is a critical parameter. It can influence many other parameters. It is essential that this parameter is well controlled. Having pH fluctuating too much, like you can see in this picture, is not good. It can be the reflection of a water that is too still or with not enough oxygen exchanges or too much microalgae. This is particularly true for outside tanks like shrimp production. And the advice for shrimp farmers is to have precise pH strategy stabilization that will reduce stress and avoid death. So for fish farmer, good practice adapted to pH can lead to increased fish growth. So now we arrive to a second series of use cases about safe and reliable data. The traceability of the data is of big importance to the digitalization process. Without traceability, there is no valuable data. Excuse me. So what does traceability mean? It means that we always keep track of the data. No data loss, no data with no idea where it comes from. Data is always valued and protected in that way. It also means that with a good traceability, it is possible to automatically compare each month or each quarter or even each year and learn from it to improve each time. Also, all the problems that can occur in a production is monitored and stored. So it is always possible to come back to it, to analyze it, and understand it with new coming data. The data will also be always secured and protected. All types of production can improve their practices continuously by always learning from the past. Interoperability of data is also important as we need data to be usable everywhere. For that, BiOceanOr is part of a European reflection group that is called AquaCloud to help to harmonize all the different data in aquaculture. Here we will talk about decalibration. As you may know, a sensor immersed into water will have a drift of its measure over time. This is a normal effect, even if you try our best to reduce that drift as much as possible with better technology. But AI algorithms can detect decalibration. This on-demand recalibration is a huge step to save time and always have accurate data. Recalibration that are made every month, for example, have two disadvantages. First one, losing time with all sensor recalibration even if you're not sure it's decalibrated. The second one is doing the recalibration too late, and that would lead to no accurate data. So decalibration detection allows to save time with on-demand recalibration and to always get accurate data. This is something that BiOceanOr has developed and that we propose to our customers. So our last use case is about sustainability. We believe that sustainability can be better achieved with certification. Aquaculture labels provide checklists to be filled in order to obtain the certification. And after that, the information has to be sent periodically to be sure that all the targets are fulfilled. So having a digitalized aquaculture monitoring helps to save time for certification with historical, traceable data and monitoring reports, especially for environmental data. And with the digitalized process, we help farmers to keep into the required thresholds, and actually, The experience showed that the more closely they monitor the water parameters, the more they learn and they adapt. And with time, their water quality stay in the required zone more often. So I hope that you found this use case interesting and that it gave you some concrete examples of aquaculture successful digitalization. So to conclude this webinar, I will present BiOceanOr products and how we can help the digitalization process of aquaculture. Our solution is a virtual assistant for water quality monitoring. It gives continuous measurement of water quality parameters and real-time visualization of the data. It is capable of anticipating water quality and to better manage critical situations. We have predictive algorithms to prevent risk. Also, our products are autonomous with solar panel and plug and play through a technology that is called LoRaWAN, which is a radio network. We have alerting systems with emails, SMS, and phone calls when thresholds are exceeded. We guarantee the data securization and the traceability of the production data. We also have a particular added value. We are marine biologists and aquaculture specialists. So we know the value of your data. We know how to interpret the data specificities, and we can help you to understand the outcomes. This is very important because you will always be dealing with specialists that give you specific advice. So here you can see how it works. We have the device in the water that can be on a floating buoy that we call aqua buoy, or a fixed device that we call aqua box. This is an IoT device, so hopefully now you know what it means. This device transmits data to the cloud and the visualization platform. You have nothing else to do. Analysis will be performed automatically and will be adapted to your farm. Alerts will be sent when any issue occurs. We can measure more than 15 physicochemical parameters of the water, such as temperature, dissolved oxygen, pH, turbidity, salinity, chlorophyll. And sensors are attached to this aqua box that you can see on the picture, which is very small and easy to deploy. This is an advantage for some farms that have particular issues. We are also proud to share the information that our solution Aquaril has been selected by the Solar Impulse Foundation to be one of the thousands efficient solutions for a better future. So I encourage you to check about this label on Solar Impulse website and about how Aquaril is an efficient solution for a sustainable future on this address that you can see down there, solarimpulse.com/efficient-solution/Aquaril. So to summarize, our solution Aquaril is a powerful decision tool to manage, alert, adapt practices. We have developed exclusive AI algorithms to predict oxygen level and to detect decalibration of probes. We are also currently developing an exclusive microalgae detection algorithm with help of satellite imaging that will be soon available. Moreover, BiOceanOr is involved in a European project called Efficiency that is developing a smart feeding system for RAS aquaculture that involves IoT and AI. So, in the end, Aquaril will help to manage the farm efficiently, continuously, and remotely. Aquaril will alert instantly of any problem, and Aquaril will also give ultra-specific advice to adapt farm practices. And all of that in a secure environment connected to your smartphone or your computer. So to finish a little bit of us, we are a team of passionate biologists, data scientists, engineers. We are all passionate by aquaculture digitalization and blue economy. And the strength of our team is the combination of all this complementary expertise to achieve the same goal, helping aquaculture to be digitalized. We are located in Sophia Antipolis. It is in the south of France. And we just closed a 1.5 million fundraise to accelerate our international development. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation and that you learned something about aquaculture digitalization. I will be happy to answer to your question now, and you can still type them in the chat, and Marilou will be asking them for me. Thank you again.
Quite active on the chat, so we'll try to answer to most of your question. So we had a question about the system. So how can the system could be implemented in a RAS, for example? How many boxes, how many system for a farm?
So actually, we have customers that have RAS systems, and it is quite simple because there is a lot of energy available in RAS systems, so we don't need the solar panel in that case. The aquabox can be plugged directly on electricity. And then we can have one aquabox per tank, or we can also have several probes that go into several tanks, depending on the number of tanks. But it is very simple installation that we are used to make.
Thank you, Charlotte. I have another question about the depth at what the probes can be deployed.
It can be deployed up to 30-meter depth, and we can also deploy several sensors at different depth because it can be interesting to follow for example, the availability of oxygen at different depth that can be very different at 3 meters, 10 meters, or 30 meters. So yes, it can go up to 30 meters.
Thanks, Charlotte. I have also a question on the frequency of the data that are sent through the Aquabox. So how does it represent as how much data a year per parameters, and what is the frequency of the data transmission?
We think that it is enough to understand the reality of the pond every 20 minutes, but we can go down to 10 minutes if needed. And it represents 60,000 data per year, so it's really a big amount of data.
Thank you, Charlotte. And I have a question on the predictive algorithm. So how do you build this predictive algorithm, for example, for the decalibration or for the oxygen?
Year training models that I've learned from 2-year deployments where we have followed the decalibration, how it is, at what frequency it has happened. And so the artificial intelligence helps us to really detect it. So it is really based on a huge amount of training data. And then now it automatically detects, and if also it learns from the new deployments. It improves every time and learns from the new deployments. For the oxygen, generally we take into account a lot of parameters. We take into account salinity, turbidity, temperature, and also for the outside systems, we take into account the weather forecast, because we know that the weather can have a huge influence on the oxygen availability, so we take into account the weather.
Thank you, Charlotte, for this precision. We also have a question about the data protection. Can you tell us more about that, please?
So the data is secured at every step of the data transmission. It is secured from the sensor to the cloud with encrypted data. So it means that if someone is intercepting the data, he will never be able to understand and read it, because we have the key for the de-encryption. And then it is secured from the cloud to the platform with several layers of certification and of security. So it is really secured at every step.
Thank you, Charlotte. I think there are a lot of questions, but we are running out of time. So for the rest, be sure we will answer it by email, or you can also download the video. We will send you the video, the replay of the video, but be sure that we will answer to all your questions. Again, thank you. Thank you very much for all your questions, your participation. We were really, really proud to do our first webinar. Thank you again, Charlotte, for sharing your expertise on that subject. If you have more questions on digitalized aquaculture or BiOceanOr solution, feel free to contact us at contacts@bioceanor.com. We could talk about your specific project and support you in your innovative and digitalized aquaculture. For information, we will also organize a second webinar in the next few months and on the thematic of certification and labelization in aquaculture. So thank you again for your participation and have a really nice day. Thank you very much.
Bye.